Welcome to Erie, Pennsylvania, the Great Lakes city and the northwesternmost part of the state that connects to the greater Erie region, along with Buffalo, New York, Cleveland, Ohio, and Monroe, Michigan. Erie is a city rich in natural beauty, bringing the closest beach-like experience to the Keystone State and a riveting history from British and French conflicts that laid the groundwork for a marine environment. Hi, I'm Jose, and I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania, enjoying the amazing scenery at one of the world's largest lakes. On this tour, we'll explore the lands of Presque Island, its shores, history, and how it developed with the help of Lake Erie. The natural peninsula is vital to the city's identity, containing several lighthouses and environmental centers. We'll also take a trip to the downtown and experience the vibrant shops and attractions hidden between the layers of an industrial history that adds another chapter to Pennsylvania's Keystone biography. So let's go on tour and experience the Great Lakes city of Erie, Pennsylvania. Our journey to Erie begins at the Great Lake, where the blue waters continue beyond the horizon, to the edges of the Canadian border. This natural formation separates the Northern Territories and is filled with wonders and a peaceful sound, different from staring out into the ocean. The waves are tamer in comparison, creating a serene and calm retreat. This is Lake Erie, as experienced from Presque Island, the natural beach which developed from sediments being pushed by the lake waters. On this summer day, Erie residents look for an escape from this record-breaking heat. Presque Island is the most visited state park in Pennsylvania, receiving more than 3 million annual visitors who come for the sandy beach, but get involved with many activities such as fishing, boating, and hiking. The magic of Lake Erie captures the fun-filled days of summer with a climate that makes it the warmest of the Great Lakes, becoming one of the most popular recreational getaways in western Pennsylvania, where visitors display their talent for swimming. As I take the slow walk over the sand dunes, it paints an image that feels like a tropical paradise, hidden away in traditionally cooler territory, which could easily be confused for a Caribbean beachfront, if not for the breakwaters protecting the peninsula. The popularity of the shoreline peaks during the summer months, where 13 beaches can be found on Presque Island, all with their own unique identity to satisfy every kind of visitor. I make my way to the sandy beach to get a look out into the lake and step away from the hot sands by dipping my feet in the cool water as the boats make their trips around this giant natural wonder. Lake Erie has a surface area of 9,910 square miles, spanning 241 miles in length and 57 miles at its widest point. That's larger than the square mileage of several states, exceeding the size of places like Vermont, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire. Not to be left behind, I put on my swimwear to better experience the beauty of this great lake, where the sounds of excitement can be heard throughout the beach, mixed with the varying scenic waters that reflect between blue and green, depending on the changing weather. Lifeguard services can be found at the more family-friendly beaches, such as beaches 10 and 11, Budney and Kohler Beach, which are popular for beachcombing and enjoying a summer picnic. The beaches at Presque Island provide a great alternative for those seeking a summer beach experience without traveling to the Atlantic shores of Delaware, Maryland, and New Jersey, mixing the feel of a beach getaway with the forests of Pennsylvania in this diverse ecological island. This is the closest to a beach experience in the state of Pennsylvania, and it's truly beautiful. Most beaches are man-made sands surrounded by lakes, since Pennsylvania is an inland state. The fun and excitement of Presque Island blends with a fascinating history that dates back to the last ice age 11,000 years ago. It showcases the wonders of the natural world and the stunning development of this 3,000-acre recreational experience. Truly a postcard summer on the shores of Lake Erie.
The perfect meal to pick up after coming from the beach.
Let's enter our time machine to travel back to one of America's most iconic eras. Sara's restaurant in Erie is a popular 50s-style diner found right outside of Presque Island, becoming a must-visit food destination when leaving the beach. It contains classic pop culture icons and 50s-style decorations for the patrons who gather en masse to visit this staple of Erie, where their tasty food is the perfect representation of an American summer. As visitors enjoy their delicious meals, the drive-through lines loop around the restaurant. Sara's was opened in 1980 by Sean Candela, naming the restaurant in honor of his mother, with an original focus on soft-serve ice cream, becoming an instant hit and tradition to the summers of Erie. The city of Erie, Pennsylvania, named after the Erie's Native Americans who settled along the lake shores. Erie's fascinating story is similar to that of Lake Ontario and Niagara, where the French built a fort to control the Great Lakes of the New World for economic and strategic power. Fort Le Boeuf in modern-day Waterford and Fort Presque Island gave the French an upper hand in the region, similar to Fort Niagara in New York. The French and British fought for the territory throughout the 17th and 18th century until the French eventually abandoned their posts. The colonial settlers, who quickly acknowledged the town's growth as a port village, joined the fight against the British, getting help from the U.S. Navy to build a fleet in Lake Erie during the War of 1812. The Battle of Lake Erie saw a victory for America, weakening the British position in the territory of Northwest and cementing Erie's place in the great American history books. It gave a significant helping hand to the country's success in the War of 1812. The Perry Monument on Presque Island is a history marker of a time forgotten, where the War of 1812 demonstrated a strategic shift to America's naval tactics. The monument measures 101 feet tall, surrounded by historical markers that recount the battle. The Great Lakes were an asset to America when it found itself outmatched by the British Royal Navy in the open sea. The lakes made transportation of supplies more convenient between the shorelines and less challenging than land travel, with Lake Ontario creating an easy passage directly to British-controlled Canadian cities of Montreal and Quebec. Lake Erie became the first Great Lake to establish lighthouses within its terrain. The Presque Island Lighthouse was commissioned in 1872, dubbed the Flashlight of Erie. The lighthouse has become a museum for Erie's maritime history, educating visitors on the Great American Battle. Back on the lands of the city is the very first lighthouse overlooking the Erie Harbor, which aided travelers passing by the changing landmass of Presque Island. The lighthouse was originally a wooden structure replaced by a 49-foot tall sandstone tower. along the eastern edges of Presque Island, is perhaps the most well-known lighthouse of Erie, the Presque Island North Pier Light, a beautiful black and white steel tower located near Erie's base for the United States Coast Guard. The only kind of lighthouse still left in America with a unique square and pyramidal design, being etched in America's history books by becoming a United States postal stamp.
Presque Island has 3 main lighthouses to navigate the crossing vessels. The shallowness of the lake create a treacherous environment when crossing between territory, putting the lighthouses to good use and warning mariners of perilous travel conditions. They've also become part of the touristic appeal of the city.
As we move closer to the city, we stop at the Tom Ridge Environmental Center, just a few miles from Presque Island, an educational facility that doubles as a visitor center, dedicated to teaching travelers about the history and species found in Presque Island and Lake Erie. On this beautiful mural, we're presented with a combination of history meets modern attractions, from the Erie's Native Americans to the wildlife and the lighthouses. And Lake Erie contains mysterious urban legends.
Erie has a pop culture history behind it. Several horror movies have been made about the lake, where Bessie, the lake monster, resides.
The Environmental Center is filled with live activities that promote conservation and environmental awareness to help protect the natural beauty of Presque Island, becoming a great interactive zone for young children. On the second floor, we can find a giant table display showcasing a geographical map of the area. The details of the map cover the shorelines, marshes, forests, and lagoons. Once we make it to the city, we're greeted by a giant sign of Erie overlooking the marina. Situated on a bluff that provides an exquisite scenic vista where park visitors can see Presque Island in the distance and the very active ships moving along the harbor. The city of Erie, Pennsylvania, the 5th largest city in the Keystone State, where State Street turns into the heart of the downtown, the main thoroughfare for business as residents engage in their daily activities, and attractions like Warner Theater have become historic pieces of the city. An art theater opened by Warner Brothers in 1931, stylized in French Renaissance, becoming the cultural center of Erie, with live showcases for the Philharmonic, Lake Erie Ballet, and Erie's very own Broadway series. State Street was once filled with cable cars and horse-drawn carriages, explaining the street's wide design, common for layouts of cities from the late 1700s that also incorporated markets and public gatherings. The summer heat fills the playground with the joyful sounds of children cooling off from the drops of the sprinklers. And UPMC Park opens its gates to fans of the Erie Seawolves, the city's local baseball team. Because of Erie's location at the very northwestern corner of Pennsylvania, the city is closer to Buffalo, New York, and Cleveland, Ohio, than driving to cities like Philadelphia, which take longer than a flight to Colombia and South America. From Erie skyline, we can spot the historic Boston store, one of the oldest buildings still standing in downtown. And within State Street, we arrive at Perry Square, aptly named after the captain, Oliver Perry, designed by Andrew Ellicott of Ellicott City, Maryland, the man who was a co-surveyor for Washington, D.C. The park serves as a central gathering place for the community, hosting events like farmers markets, concerts, festivals, and civic activities. At the core of the East Perry Square is a beautiful fountain, splashing away at the residents of the city. Erie's fascinating environment can be captured in the smiles of its residents. Often voted as one of Pennsylvania's best cities, it's been nicknamed the Gem City, as a gem of the Great Lakes, who helped the country rise to victory during its most crucial days as a young nation, where the seal of the city breaks out the history and heritage of the county, the identity of its land, importance of Presque Island, and connection to the Great Lake, all giving thanks to the efforts of a valiant naval commander. At the edges of State Street, we return to the Erie Marina and one of Erie's most notable landmarks.
At the center of the Erie waterfront is the Bicentennial Tower, an almost 200-foot tall structure that commemorated the city's bicentennial anniversary in 1996. The tower is one of the main attractions to the city, containing 2 observation decks that provide stunning views of Erie and the Great Lake. On a clear day, you can see almost 30 miles out into Canada.
From the very top of the tower, Lake Erie and the boats in the marina look like a stunning painting, where the water is calm and beautiful, and the sails of this ship finalize the Renaissance design. Dobbins Landing was named after Daniel Dobbins, sailing master in the U.S. Navy, who oversaw the construction of the ships for the Battle of Erie. Through the looking glass, we're able to revisit State Street and the movement of the many boats in the marina. Erie's harbor has played a major economic role in the development of the city, being a hub for commerce across the Great Lakes, as goods made their way to Lake Ontario and out into the Atlantic Ocean, handling cargoes that range from steel to sand and gravel. From here, we see the ship, Letty G. Howard, sailing past the waterfront, the only remaining vessel of its kind, a ship commonly used by offshore fishermen. The ship traces its roots back to Essex, Massachusetts, and has traveled all throughout the Great Lakes into the Gulf of Mexico. The Erie waterfront contains access to other attractions like the Erie Maritime Museum, Liberty Park, and the Bayfront Convention Center, making way for activities like kayaking, paddleboarding, and jet skis, lining up next to the tall ships. As we descend from the tower, we can find the remnants left behind by visitors, marking their place in Erie history by putting locks onto the bicentennial gates, leaving behind tokens along the beautiful and vibrant walking path that guides us to the tall ships docked at the harbor. From the lower observation deck, we can see passengers boarding the Victorian Princess, a ship designed with a 3-level paddle wheeler that takes visitors on an hour ride along the lake.
There are several iconic ships in the Erie Marina with incredible history behind them. During the return of the British at the War of 1812, Captain Oliver Perry became the hero of Erie, leading 9 ships to victory and crippling British supply routes across Canada. It was the first time in history that an entire British squadron had surrendered. The Battle of 1812 changed the landscape for the American military. Fortifications were constructed along coastal cities from New York to Florida and proved the need to have a strong navy to protect America, leading to a bigger expansion and development of the naval military branch.
The ships at Erie's Marina, significant in their own right, have a historical connection to naval warfare. From the Letty G. Howard that's currently docked and being serviced, to the replica of the iconic USS Niagara, Erie is a perfect city to explore America's maritime history, where Captain Oliver Perry's sentiments could be followed to America's other great maritime city, Annapolis, Maryland. Ships from all over the world traveled to Erie during its famed Tall Ships Festival, being one of the main drivers to the city's tourism. During the Battle of 1812, Captain James Lawrence of the USS Chesapeake famously uttered the words, "Don't give up the ship," which became the rally cry for the US Navy. Oliver Perry adopted this motto to his battle flag, which re-energized his battalion to win the war, penning the words, "We have met the enemy, and they are ours." As passengers await their departure on the Victorian Princess, our ship captain prepares his communication and navigation devices. The Victorian Princess was established in 1988, resembling classic riverboats of the Victorian era and mimicking the popular paddle wheels found throughout American rivers during the 19th century. It originated almost 200 years to the date of America's first steamboat in 1787, where industrialist John Fitch conceived a passion for the vessels during his time living in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. The crewmates continued their preparations for departure, removing any anchor points and tie downs. The beautiful vessel that is the Victorian Princess not only serves as one of the best ways to explore Erie, but also as a way to enjoy a delightful meal containing everything from brunch to dinner, happy hour and cookouts, enough to keep visitors coming back for more. And the many ducks that surround the harbor become curious to all the exciting commotion. As the Victorian Princess takes off into Lake Erie, we wave goodbye to this modern classic that preserves one of America's most innovative periods. While one vessel departs, another arrives, but this time it's a more treacherous encounter, a ship full of pirates. Scallywags Pirate Adventures enters the harbor, full of visitors enjoying the riveting attraction. This beautifully designed vessel traces its roots back to Maryland, where it sailed through the Atlantic Ocean and the Great Lakes to settle in Erie. And as the unsuspecting visitors get caught in the beauty of the Bicentennial Tower, a pirate arrives at the scene. The interactive storyline is reminiscent of the major battle that became Erie's history in 1812, leaving behind a legacy as a turning point for America, where this battle will lead to the British also surrendering in Detroit and the rest of Michigan. While Erie is best associated with its maritime legacy, it also contains its own historic chapter in Pennsylvania's locomotive stories. A chapter of innovation, growth, but also mixed with emotions. In the borough of Northeast, located 14 miles from the city, is the Lake Shore Railway Historical Society, preserving the legacy of the railroads that extended to northwestern Pennsylvania, western New York, and northeastern Ohio. The museum is an organization of volunteers who reimagined the former New York Central passenger depot, surrounded by a stunning collection of locomotives. Walking the grounds of the museum, I reflect on the importance of Erie's railroad system. It was pivotal for expansion between New York, Pittsburgh, and the rest of the Northeast, eventually becoming one of the largest rail companies in America, before its decline and integration into CSX, like many other rail lines. As I board the remains of these amazing engines, I look back at Erie's darker period. It was the Railroad War of 1853 that disconnected the citizens of Erie from the railroad companies. The conflict was a struggle to determine the gauge that would dominate the Erie Railroad network. The American Standard Gauge, or the broad gauge, a water measurement from the early 19th century. This conflict would cause a potential consolidation of railroad lines, creating economic distress to many of the vendors who sold goods to passengers. The war intensified the railroad competition between corporations for dominance of the Great Lakes, leading to violence between the city of Erie and the township of Harbor Creek. The state of Pennsylvania sent reinforcements to control the rising chaos, which was heavily criticized by other states. It became a local taboo for many years, until its resolution, which reshaped America's future for rail transportation, establishing a standard and dominant gauge for all future rail tracks. Walking through these giant relics and learning about the truly remarkable history gives me a whole new perspective on Pennsylvania and its continuing story on being the Keystone State, where even this corner of the territory leaves behind a story of pioneers.
The city of Erie is a fascinating adventure to the pages of the Pennsylvania storybook. It's filled with some of the most beautiful natural lands found across the state, a rich history that created another branch to the American narrative, with connections to the glacial wonders of North America and its own industrial story that places it among one of the greatest in the Keystone State. Truly a gem of a city. I'm Jose, and I thank you for joining me on this wonderful adventure in the city of Erie. Until next time.